All right, good morning, everybody. So we are going to go ahead and jump right in. This morning we are talking about unit membership renewals and obviously unit renewals. I am going to jump around in my presentation a little bit, so if I skip through a bunch of slides, don't panic. I do have some information if folks want afterwards about how to do this as an individual to renew your membership, but today we are mostly going to be focusing on the unit side of things. And as we do with all of our meetings, we like to start with a brief safety moment. So I figured, given the weather recently, it was fitting to talk about being safe on ice. As we have reached our winter months, we want to make sure that we are being cautious as we walk outdoors. And some best practices include making sure that anytime we're going out during cold temperatures, we are approaching things with caution. Assume that all wet, dark areas on pavement are probably slippery and icy. During bad weather, we want to avoid things with soft soles and heels and make sure we have a little bit of traction to help get through that icy weather on the ground. We want to make sure we're taking special care when entering and exiting vehicles, using the door as support just to make sure that you have solid footing before you step out all the way. Always try and walk in designated areas. Those are usually the most likely to be cleared, and make sure you're, paying attention as you walk around. If you've never heard the adage of walking on ice, make sure you walk like a penguin. So kind of spread your feet out slightly and almost kind of waddle a bit if you do have to go over an icy patch. You want to keep your arms out a little bit out towards your sides to maintain balance. Don't put your hands in your pockets while you're walking because that can mess with your center of gravity, and make sure you're going slowly. Take short steps and shuffle for stability. It's helpful if you're wearing a heavy or bulky coat. Should you fall, gives you a little bit of extra cushioning. And if you were to fall, try and avoid landing on your knees, wrists, or your spine. Obviously, that can cause injury. So you want to kind of try and land on your softer sides. And if you're going to fall, try and not tense up, be relaxed. That can help keep you from hurting yourself. So just a little bit of safety as we reach our winter weather and we're all heading outdoors for lots of fun. We want to make sure we're being safe. So some updates for folks that don't remember, the renewal system did change last year. So the unit renewal and membership renewals are no longer one process. Membership is now set for 12 months terms, starting at the point that you join scouting. So any scout that joins in September renews of September that next year. And a reminder that our membership renewals are separate from our unit renewals. So we'll be talking about both things. As for units, Key 3 members or their delegates can renew the youth. The charter rep or their delegates can renew adults as well as the youth. Some things you can do now, if you haven't already, is making sure that we are going through and updating the youth's contact information in My.Scouting. Please note that if you make changes in Scout Book, that does not sync to My.Scouting. So you need to make the changes there, and then it should be reflected in Scout Book. We want to make sure that we are checking our rosters and making sure that all of our youth's contact information is correct, and then checking our rosters as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. The other thing is to decide annually who is handling renewals. So whether you're going to have parents and members renewing themselves directly, the unit, or a combination of those two things. Have a clear plan and communicate it with your members and families multiple times. A new unit member coordinator is very helpful in this. They can kind of be someone to take on communicating things related to this. You need to frequently remind folks. We all know as we go through these things that folks need constant reminders about renewals. It's a very busy time of year for a lot of people. Make sure we're giving people training and showing them how to do this. You all are wonderfully attending a session on this, so you're getting that information. And we will share more resources at the end, but always you can also reach out to your district professionals for support as well as our council registrars. So if a unit is going through and going to renew membership, there are a couple steps you need to take. The first one is obviously logging into my.scouting.org. From there, you're going to click on the menu and select Organization Manager. You're going to go down to your roster. You're going to select your scouts and scouters for renewal. You're going to click the renew button. You can also opt folks out during this process, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. It'll show you the list of folks that you're renewing. You can then enter your payment information and then finalize payment. So we can take a quick look at what that looks like. So once you've logged into my.scouting, you will see pretty much this screen. You'll be able to go down. So here under organization, this little drop down menu right here is where you can select which unit you are going to. Now, this is important if you are someone who is registered in multiple units, say a pack and a troop, to just double check that you were under the correct unit. So in this case, we have troop 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously, it's not a current actual troop. We're going to select that unit, and then we're going to click on the roster button. So then what's going to pop up is you're going to see a full roster of all of the youth and adults in your unit. Now, this is a really important thing that you can all start doing very soon, is periodically checking this roster to ensure that everyone that's on this roster is still active in Scouts and that there's not someone who's currently coming to meetings that's not on this roster. If they're not showing up on this roster, that means they are not registered in that unit. It is, especially for most units, there will be multiple pages. This is just displaying a couple as an example, so you may need to toggle from page 1 to page 2 to page 3 or so on. So do note that. But it's really important to periodically be checking this roster and making sure that all of the youth are displaying properly, as well as all of our adults. Some reasons that someone may have dropped off is obviously their membership has lapsed. The other thing that might be is for a lot of our adults, if their safeguarding youth protection is not current. We periodically will temporarily suspend people's memberships if they don't have current safeguarding youth. That might cause them to drop off this roster. So if you get in and you have an adult who you know is not, their membership is current, but they're not on your roster, pretty much your first assumption should be that their safeguarding youth is not current and that they need to go in and do that training and provide us with the certificate so we can unsuspend their membership. That's a common thing that I know has been happening a lot recently. So once you get in to your unit and you look through and you decide who you need to renew, what you're going to do is you're going to click the little boxes by the scouts' names here on the left. If you are doing everybody all at once, you can actually select this button up here and it will select everyone on that page. Do note that you need to move, if there's more than one page of members, it only selects everyone on that page. So you need to hit it for page 1, then go to page 2 and do the same thing. So once you have selected everyone, then you're going to click this renew button here. So this example, let's say I'm renewing all of these scouts here. I've selected them, and then I'm going to click renew. The next screen you are then going to get is a summary of everyone you have selected. So you will see their name, their troop number, their position, that is listed as their primary position, and you'll get a big list of everybody. Obviously, this is just an example with 3 scouts. At this point, you can select or unselect Scout Life subscriptions for folks. I believe it does default to selecting Scout Life at this stage. I know there is talks of potentially it going to, if they had the subscription, it will show up as selected automatically. If they did not the previous year, it won't, but just double check that at this point. You can just unclick this if someone does not want Scout Life. Another thing to note is Scout Life you can add it after this point, after registrations are completed, but it is significantly harder. So if someone wants Scout Life, I think it is very helpful to do it at this point. Once you have done that, you can then hit here, click where it says create renewal order. So that will create a renewal batch for these individuals. Then when you go back to your roster page, down here you will see the unit paid membership renewal batches. So it'll have that batch that you just created. It'll show the number of orders. And if you did not pay for it directly in the next step, it'll still make the batch. It'll mark it as paid and you can access it at any point. And then you can go in and select go to payment to finish up that renewal batch. So that payment screen, what it'll look like is it'll show you a summary of your traditional youth, your traditional adults, the breakdown of all of the fees. Please note that the credit card payments do have a 3% processing fee attached to them. If you choose to do the bank direct deposits through My.Scouting. I believe there is a $1 fee for that. So please make sure you take note of that. And then you can put in, you may have a saved payment method in there from when doing renewals last time or earlier this year. So it may be saved in there. If not, it'll prompt you to enter your credit card information and then you can hit pay. So that's basically the quick version of what that looks like. Now, if you don't want to pay with a credit card, you don't have to. The unit can still do this. So what you'll do is a very similar process as to paying online with a credit card. So you will select the members you wish to renew. You'll hit the print button. You will hit unit payment of registration renewal, and then you will bring that paperwork into one of our 3 council service centers with your payment. So what that looks like is, again, on that same screen under roster, I will select everyone I wish to renew. I will go up here to print, and then I will select unit payment of membership renewal. This will automatically download a renewal report that will look somewhat like this. So you'll have a list of everybody's names, their positions, their member ID, yes or no for Scout Life. This for Scout Life, doing it manually, if you need to make a change to this, you can just cross off no and write in yes, or cross off yes and write in no. And then Kim, our council registrar, will make adjustments. Just note the difference in the fee change. Scout Life subscriptions are $15 for the year. So you'll have it'll have the whole report. It'll give you a nice little summary at the end with your total amount due. And then you'll just bring this into our council service centers, and they will go ahead and get that processed. So that is the quick kind of overview if a unit is renewing members. Some things to note: if you have folks that are multipled across different units, one of the things that can get a little complicated is if they go in and renew themselves individually, they can renew all of their positions in one setting. So, for example, if they're a merit badge counselor, if they're in a pack and a troop, when they renew, they can renew everything all at once. When you're renewing under a unit, you're only renewing them in that position with the unit. So, for example, if my assistant scoutmaster is also involved in my pack, if I'm going in and renewing them under the troop, I'm only renewing their position in the troop. So you will also need to make sure someone goes in and renews them under the pack registration. Obviously, if they are a multiple, they don't pay twice. Right now, I don't believe there is a way for them to be marked as, for you to like mark them as a multiple if you're doing the physical paperwork. So what'll happen if you do the pay at council option, you'll just need to note that they're a multiple from another unit. So that way the fees get changed. If you do it online and they have an existing registration, it should calculate that and not charge you for them. But just something to note to keep in mind with multiples. So, and I'm just...
And Jess, I noticed that on your example that you went through, one of the individuals had the multiple button underneath it, and you could click it and see where they're multipled. So
Yes, yeah. So let me go back actually. That is a good point. Yeah. So up here, for example, this committee chair, if they have more than one registration, it will actually show that so you can see their different registrations that they have across other units. So if you get into complicated things with multiples and you have questions, please reach out to us. I know it is probably the most confusing part, especially because there were some changes last year while this was all going on. Darlene, were there any questions about individual or unit renewals of memberships in the chat?
The only one that I saw was somebody got all the way to the payment section and it appeared like nothing happened.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm
So
trying to think of.
basically, I had submitted a payment on three individuals, and it just didn't seem to actually hit our checking account because we use a debit card. So I'm just curious if our chartered rep has to approve my renewals or not. That's like I wasn't sure if there was a hang up or not.
Yeah, no, I do know it does take sometimes a couple days for that. So depending on how recently you did it, that might be the issue. If it hasn't gone through in, I'd say, 3 business days, reach out to our council registrar or your district professional, and we can look into it a little further to make sure that it did finalize the payment. But I know sometimes it takes a day or two for it to actually go through the banks.
Okay.
So,
So, so the other
another, oh, go ahead, Dar.
the other question was, I don't have the option for transfer or renew. What roles can do this? I was currently moved from just den leader to also being the unit advancement chair.
Gotcha. If you are just an advancement chair, you will not have the ability to renew people or transfer them. The only roles that can do so are what's called a unit key 3. That is your unit leader, your scout master, cub master, crew advisor, your committee chair, and your charter representative. So they can designate you a key 3 delegate that would give you that ability. And that is something that can be done in position manager, forgive me. And I actually can talk about that a little bit more when we get into unit renewals. Another thing to note, if you have someone who has already told you that they are not continuing on with scouting or they are not staying in that unit, you can opt out their membership. You can do so, and I'll actually pull up this one. Right here in that roster page, so you'll see where it says opt out, you can actually select that button and that will opt that person out. It is supposed to stop the email reminders that they receive about renewals, and then they will eventually fall off your roster. If someone has gone in and opted themselves out, that should change here as well to show you that they have selected that. Please note if you do that and you opt someone out in error, the only way for that to be changed is for our council registrars to make that change. So you'll have to reach out to council for us to overturn that. We can do it. It's not very complicated, but there's not a way for unit key 3 to unopt someone out. So just a thing to keep in mind. So, all
And it's
right.
all that was in the chat
All right,
so
perfect. All
far.
right. So, and again, I'll stick around afterwards for questions or to help walk folks through things a little bit more in depth. But we are going to now jump. So if a unit is doing membership renewal, that are your 2 options. Basically, the thing to note is if you are going to either pay online with a credit card or if you're going to print the paperwork and pay manually at council, both options are there. It's a fairly similar process. Just make sure you guys kind of know which method you would like to go to. So our
And
next main
and
topic,
just at the end, maybe we'll show there is a renewal form that the registrar is requiring if you are going to pay in person. It's
yes,
just
yeah,
kind of a cover sheet.
gotcha. Okay, I
And
know they were,
I can display that at the end. I haven't,
okay, perfect, great.
so.
All right, so the other side of things that units need to do this time of year is obviously our unit renewals. So this is a separate process again. So any unit key 3, again, that charter rep, committee chair, and unit leader can go ahead and renew the unit. This will open up 2 months prior to your expiration. So for a majority of our units, December 31st is your expiration. So you've been able to start renewing as of November 1st. For my Great Trails folks, you guys all just got access here on December 1st. It's recommended that you kind of double check everything before you go in and do it just to make sure that there are no errors. You'll get validation code errors. If it's an error, it'll be in red and you will not be able to proceed. If it is a warning in yellow, it will allow you to proceed to completing it online. However, our council registrars will not be able to actually post the unit or finish the renewal until that issue has been addressed. Some common errors and warnings that we see is not having current safeguarding youth training. That's usually the most common one, so making sure we're keeping up to date with the new version of the training. Little plug for it, if you haven't taken it yet, it is very nice. I think they did a very great job with it. It's much more modern. It's all in one module, which is very nice. So if you have not already done so, I highly encourage you to take the new Safeguarding Youth training. Some other errors you might get is if you do not have the required number of leaders in the correct positions. If you have leaders that are under 18, If the youth does not meet the age or grade requirements of the program, those are all errors that need to be fixed before you will be able to complete the renewal online. The two main things that are going to give you warnings if you, for some reason, have adults who have not completed a criminal background check authorization, or if there's an adult who does not have a social security number on file, you will be able to finish the renewal online, but we won't actually be able to complete your unit renewal on the council side until we have that information. So the steps for this process are fairly short. You're going to, again, log into your my.scouting account. You're going to click on select the unit that you're renewing under Organization Manager. You're going to click on Unit Renewal, validate for a 12-month term, review the information, make any changes, put your name into a signature field, and then pay and submit. Please note that there is another part of this process that is not in the online system, and that is the annual charter agreement is mandatory and should be obtained and completed. That is an agreement between you and your chartered organization that needs to be signed off by them, your unit leadership, as well as your district professional. So please make sure you're doing that as well and submitting that to council so we can add that to your records. So what this process will look like is you'll go into my.scouting, you will select your unit, you will have this unit renewal tab that will have showed up in the last couple days. And here's where you can take a look and see who's currently showing up as your unit leadership. It'll have your charter org and the terms that you're looking at. It'll show your current membership. And then down here, this is where those errors will pop up. So in this case, this fake unit has a charter validation error. I believe it was a youth protection thing that would need to be fixed before they would be able to complete this process. If there's nothing here, then you have no errors and you're good to go. So if you get into this screen and all of this information looks correct and there's no errors, you can go ahead and type your name into this box, and then you'll be able to hit next steps, unit pin review, or you can hit click here for council office option, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So moving on to step 2, every year you will have you'll have an opportunity to update your unit pin. So you'll go in and this will look like it normally does if you're doing a pin update. So you'll be able to select if you want to appear on bscout.org, if you want to have people apply online, you'll be able to select a person for the contact, add some additional information. If you have a unit website, you can put that in there, and this will show you what it'll look like to someone else. And you can toggle on and off if you want email or phone number, contact information, things like that. So this is just a chance for you to review to make sure that information is current and up to date. After you've done that, the next step will be the payment screen. So it will show you the recharter fee is $100 a year for units. Again, there is a 3% fee for credit card payments made online or at our council service centers. So the total is $103. You'll be able to put in your information for the credit card or the ACH payment, which is basically a direct payment through your bank. It's an e-check that does have a $1 fee attached to it. Put in all that information. You can also save the card for future payments if you would like, and then you can submit payment. You'll get a confirmation screen saying it has been processed. You'll also get an email as well, and that'll have a receipt from National. And that's it. The unit renewal side of the thing is pretty easy and pretty straightforward as long as there are no errors. If you do not wish to pay online with a credit card, you can, again, pay at our local service centers. So that's that click here at Pay for Local Council option button. It will download the physical paperwork that needs to be signed and then submitted to one of our 3 service centers. So click here for Pay at Council option. And then, I guess I don't have a screenshot of what that paperwork looks like, but it's fairly short. It's 1 page. You can sign it and then submit it. Now, that's kind of the same thing.
I think I have a note here to remind everyone that when they're doing that piece, that you need to make sure that your COR and your institution head are registered. On that one screen, I think you showed it, they were, but they will need to be registered before you'll be able to proceed.
Yes. And there is a question in the chat about, can the unit renew before memberships are renewed? Potentially, yes. I actually do recommend if everything is current and you can go through to renew the unit before membership renewals. As long as your adult leaders are all currently registered, you have the correct number of positions, and they all have current safeguarding youth, you can renew the unit whilst before you do any membership renewals. What'll stop it is if you have an adult who isn't currently registered, it won't let you renew the unit. So it's a little easier sometimes to renew the unit because you can do that while people are just getting into their membership renewal timeline as well. As long as everything for the required amount of leaders, their training is current, you can renew the unit before you do membership. It usually works out a little easier, but not all the time. If you need to make changes to your adults, you can change around positions. So let's say you have an assistant cub master who's becoming your cub master, you have a den leader that's changing to committee chair, or whatever changes need to be made. That can be done by your charter representative or their delegate using Position Manager, or with signed adult applications by your charter rep. Some notes of required positions that every unit needs to have is our executive officer is not listed on here, but that is one to note. That's an unpaid position, so we need to make sure that they're getting renewed, but there is no fee attached to those folks. So just make sure that that person is still the executive officer and then renew them like normal or have them renew themselves. But you're required to have a chartered representative, your unit leadership, so that's your cub master, scout master, crew advisor, a committee chair, two committee members, and for our packs, you must have a den leader listed. So make sure you've
And
got
Jen,
those.
there was a question about how do you remove adults from your list? I don't know if you're going to cover that.
Gotcha. You can do that in the roster section by opting them out. That will undo their registration. If you need to change like someone, let's say your committee chair is coming off, you can opt them out. But if they're still showing up under committee chair, if you have the new person under position manager, your charter rep can actually go in and when they go in, these buttons are actually blue and you can like physically move people around. I unfortunately don't have the ability to do that as a district executive, but you would see each person listed and the name of each person in each of those positions. So you'd be able to move them out of that role and put them in as like unit scouter reserve and then move someone else into that role. So position manager can be accessed through my.scouting. Always you can get to it under the unit information and also as you're renewing the unit at the very bottom of the unit leadership, this edit positions button will take you to position manager. So this is the point where you can change around if you need to change who's on leadership for anyone who has a current registration in the unit. If you have a new cub master or a new parent or something that's coming into a position, they need to be on your roster before you can change their positions around in here. How do we install a key 3 delegate? Would this be useful for an incoming committee chair? That is, you should talk with your chartered organization if they are comfortable with that. Key 3 delegate is a functional position that can be added in for folks by the current charter representative or through by them contacting us and you completing an adult application. It's a functional role that, let's say you've got a charter rep that's maybe not as tech savvy or they're going to be out of town for a period of time, they can choose to do that. I caution having a lot of people listed as key 3 or as charter rep delegates because that is giving them the same abilities as a charter representative to make position changes. And so we just want to make sure that charter organizations are comfortable with the person being listed as a delegate and taking on that responsibility. But it is a functional role. So if you go in here, these are registered positions. If you click this functional role tab, it'll have more categories and you can place people into that position as well. Some common things that come up during this process. If you are having issues logging into my.scouting, the reset password button that shows up doesn't actually work. The only way to reset your My.Scouting login is to contact your district professional or one of our council registrars, and we can go in and do so. If you just go in and like start a new profile, it might not be attached to your current member ID, so it creates a second profile for you and it gets really confusing. I know it's confusing to have a reset password button that essentially doesn't do anything, but that's just the way it is. So if you are having issues logging in, contact us. We can go ahead and reset your password for you very easily, and we will get that taken care of. If you used your Google or Apple credentials for your password when you initially created your My.Scouting account, the only way to reset your password is through those systems. We don't have the ability to reset those passwords. So if you know when you went in and made your My.Scouting account the first time and you used Google or Apple to set up your password, you have to do it through that. We won't be able to reset your password for you then. There are several different informational graphics and videos and stuff on the National Council page for resources, as well as I've included the links here for our local council pages as well. When in doubt as well, reach out to your district professionals, contact our council registrars, and we will help answer any questions. In case anybody doesn't know, here's the addresses, hours, and phones for our 3 council service centers, as well as our website, email, and Facebook page for the council. So those are the specific things that I kind of wanted to go over with everyone, and then I will kind of open this up to questions and more explanation, folks. So I'm actually going to stop
Jess,
sharing
we
my
have one
screen.
more item in the
Yeah.
chat, and it says, if we have unit leaders that have moved from the pack to the troop, are we okay to opt them out without an impact to what they're doing now with the troop?
If you opt them out under the unit, it should only opt them out in the pack. If trying to think, if you've got folks that you need to trim, you're probably better off if they've just made sure that they're on the troop, like they've actually transferred for the troop first. Like if you've got somebody right now that, let's say I'm in a pack right now, but I haven't transferred to the troop yet, it'll make things more complicated if you opt them out. So just make sure that they've moved to the troop before you do that. But when you opt them out, you're only doing that in that specific unit. If I go in as an individual and opt myself out, I can opt out of various positions or I can opt out entirely for anything. I have my registrations in. So it's a little different if an individual does it versus if a unit leader's doing it for someone else. So I would just say the one thing is to double check that that their registration is current in the troop before you opt them out, but then you could go ahead and opt them out of the pack.
So just before we get to questions, I'm just going to share
Oh, yes.
that document.
So there's a question in the chat about opting out a current assistant scoutmaster that does not wish to continue in that role, but wishes to continue to be a merit badge counselor. I would check with them first. So they can be just registered as a merit badge counselor. However, they have to have a paid registration somewhere. So if you're, let's say you're an assistant scoutmaster, you can be multipled in as a merit badge counselor. If you don't have that registration, then they would still need to renew their merit badge counselor registration. And there is a $25, which I also believe we do charge the council program fee for them as well, for if they're just a merit badge counselor. So if you opt them out, you're going to opt them out of being the ASM, but they would need to make sure they go in and renew their merit badge counselor themselves, which is actually a good thing to note. A lot of merit badge counselors were dropped last year because the units renewed their membership within the units, but they still need to make sure that they renew their merit badge counselor registration individually. So what they can do, and Dar just pulled up our council registration renewal form. They can submit this to renew their merit badge counselor position if they don't want to do it through the online system.
So this is the form if you're going to pay at the office that you just need to fill this out. There, someone asked where it is found. It was included in the email that you got where it says it's time to renew your unit. If you click on one of those buttons at the bottom, you will find it. There are also some of them printed in the office on the wall with all the information. You can just grab one and fill it out
Yeah.
as you're paying your fee.
Yeah. Couple of notes about this from Kim is please make sure that if you are coming in to complete your renewal and you have multiple registrations, that you have forms for basically all of those positions. Also, if you're a unit looking to renew folks, if you've got like a one-off person, use this form. If you're going to do 20 renewals, we ask that you still go in and do that paper option that I explained earlier and submit that versus submitting 20 of these to Kim, just because that helps with our record keeping, keeps things running smoothly in our offices. So this is meant to be if there's an individual who needs to renew, and doesn't want to go through the online system, but don't try and submit 20 of them to renew your whole unit, just because it takes up more of your time and it takes up more of Kim's time. If you're having problems getting that physical paperwork to pay at council to renew memberships, again, reach out to us. We can help walk you through that process. Can I show the page that had the required leadership? Yes, yes, I can. Give me one moment.
While she's doing that, I just want to make a few points here. Your any renewal that's not processed by December 31st will drop. This means that you cannot do advancement, no attendance at council and district activities, and no liability insurance. An accident and injury occurring for a unit not chartered is the sole responsibility of the adults and the organization. So it's just a minute. I'm just trying to impress upon you that this really needs to get done before we've asked for it by December 15th, but definitely by December 31st.
Yeah. And for my Great Trails folks, because I know there was a little bit of worry, our timeline is slightly different on the unit renewals, and a lot of our folks expire on January 31st. You can certainly start this process early and get a head start on getting this done. I would love to see the district still have all of our unit renewals completed by December 15th. But no, with the membership renewals, a lot of our folks expire on January 31st. So you do have that same lapse period. So if somebody they have 60 days after their membership expires that they are in what's called the lapse period. That is where, as Darlene just said, they shouldn't really be participating in things like that until they've been renewed, but you can get them renewed a little bit easier. After that point, they will drop off your roster officially, and then they will need to submit a new application to be renewed. So that's where if you are looking through your roster and you are seeing someone on there who, let's say they expire December 31st and it's January 15th, they're now in the lapse period, you can get them renewed fairly easily, where once they get past that lapse period, they're not going to show up on your roster anymore. So that's why it's important to be reviewing your roster, making sure that the kids that are attending are all on that list. And if they're not, then we need to submit a new application to council with payment to get them back on your roster.
And it's really important that, as just started off, that you look at who's attending your meetings and who's participating as adults, and make sure that they are registered and have taken their training. It has become easier with the online registration for people not to register online and then to still be in leadership positions. And as we know, that is not allowed, and you could run into some problems if something should happen. So is it okay to opt out a current assistant scoutmaster that doesn't wish to be an assistant scoutmaster but wants to continue to be a merit badge counselor?
But yeah, if you opt them out as an assistant scoutmaster, it'll just opt them out of that role. They will just need to make sure they renew their merit badge counselor registration. Let's see, Jessica, you have a scout who submitted for their renewal for next year, but the dates weren't adjusted and still states they are due in 2025. My initial thought is likely that their renewal hasn't been finalized. So that means maybe the payment still is pending. It hasn't gone through yet. Once it does, it should adjust their dates. If that is still showing as an issue, reach out to us and I can have our council registrar, Kim, take a look at that. Let's see, Jeff. So we don't need the paper form if we're doing multiple renewals in a unit then. No, the paper form is just if someone basically says, hey, I don't want to deal with the online system at all. I just want to get my stuff renewed. That is an option for them to basically bypass the online system. It's not required that you submit that in addition to doing the online stuff. It's really just kind of our way of providing another option for folks if they don't want to use the online system. Um, and then if you're handling all the renewals either as a unit or if they're doing it individually, you don't need that form. So it's just a supplemental thing there. So that way, if folks are having issues navigating the system or they don't want to do that as a council, we still have a way to get them renewed that makes it a little easier on our registrar. Yes. So, for our last question here from Teresa. So I know, with the release information that the family troop option has been approved by the National Council, there's a lot of folks with questions about what that process is going to look like and their unit renewals. Unfortunately, at this time, we don't have more information of some of the details of what that is going to look like in terms of that paperwork. We are still waiting from that from the National Council. I did talk with Kim, and the one thing we can suggest right now is looking at the preliminary information. What essentially will happen is if that is an option that your troops are going to merge into one of the units will basically be the surviving unit, or that will be the primary unit. Register everyone under that unit, do all of their renewals there first. So let's say you've got a scoutmaster, let's say your committee is registered both in boy troop 1 and girl troop 2. Re-register everyone in troop 1 first. That will mark that as their primary position. What that means is that will show up as where their paid registration lives. Um, Renew them in that unit, pay in Troop 1, and then go in and renew their registrations currently in the Girl Troop 2, and that'll mark them all as multiples in that unit. Renew the youth the same either way, because you won't be able to multiple the youth across the units yet. But for your adults, if you go in and whichever unit number is going to be the surviving unit number, re-register folks there, mark that as their primary. To my understanding, tentatively, of what is going to happen is for any troops that are combining into a family troop, essentially there will be a pathway forward to this, and I have to speak in kind of vague terms because I don't know a ton more details yet, but we should have that information soon, is everyone will be basically transferred into the one unit. The one unit will become the new family troop, and the other unit will just drop off. So the one thing you can do now is everyone's membership they need to have an existing membership somewhere. So for your adults, again, I would suggest re-registering everybody first in whichever unit number you want to be the surviving unit number. That'll mark that as their primary. And then you can also multiple them in the other unit. And then once we have more information about merging them over, they'll just all basically make sure everybody's transferred. The youth, you're just going to have to renew them in the existing unit. And then again, there'll be a pathway to transfer them into whichever unit is becoming the family troop. As for renewing the unit itself, Darlene, I don't know if you have any more information. Yeah, I didn't think so. I know it's
I
a
don't.
little
I
frustrating to.
don't, and it's important to note that if you're the unit itself, the committee chairs and whatever in those two units cannot make that decision. It must be made by the chartering organization. So if your troops are wanting to do that, you need to make sure that you're talking to your chartered organization representative and your executive officer and make sure that that's something that they will agree to. So that's an important step. First step is to make sure you're going to get their approval.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's you can start the initial phases of that conversation, but that is a very important thing. This is a chartered organization decision. So that is something that is paramount as we discuss this. And as soon as we have more information and a more clear pathway forward for folks about what this is going to look like, we will certainly share it with them. We are anxiously waiting, like you all are as well. Only members in one unit, not both. That's okay. So honestly, the thing is if you have someone, as long as they have an existing current registration, when we get to this process, or at any point, if somebody is registered in a pack and then let's say 3 months from now, when their youth crosses over, we know they're going to go to a troop, you can take that existing registration and we can transfer them just like we do the youth to another unit. So I wouldn't stress about trying to make sure everybody's in one unit or another or something like that. As long as they have a current membership, it's fairly easy to transfer folks over to a different unit. Obviously, with chartered organization approval and that kind of thing for our adults. Same thing with the youth. You know, if you have the girls, and let's say the girls are in, again, troop two and troop one is going to become the family troop, make sure the girls' registrations are current, and then we'll have the pathway to transfer them over into the family troop once we have more information about that. So on the membership side of things, keep people, just get them renewed in their current units, and then it'll be very easy for us to move folks over into other units down the line as we explore this process more.
I know some people are hesitant about renewing the whole unit if they're going to be doing the merge because of the $100 fee. We don't know yet if you're renewed and then you decide to do that, if you will get a refund for one of those units. But that would be on the national level because that's not something that we as a council keep that $100 fee that goes to national. So I think Jess's point is pertinent, is just make sure that all of the people that are going to be in those units do their individual registration and make sure that it's current. And then, like she said, it's easy to move people around afterwards.
Yeah. And to Teresa, your question of having some Cubs that are looking to join a troop but don't currently have an option, we still have a little bit of time. We should have more direction from National about this process before we get into the crossover season for our Arrow of Light Scouts. I would be very surprised if we didn't have things kind of worked out and the units in existent by that point. So just, reassure them, keep their membership current in the packs, and then, we will have more information to share with folks before we truly get into AOL crossover season. And then we'll hopefully be able to cross them right over into their new troops. So. Alrighty. Well, unless folks, if you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or stick around if you want to talk some more. I'm happy to stick on for a little bit and help walk through stuff and get through things. Thank you all for joining us on a Saturday morning. I hope you're all home warm and comfortable and not out on the cold winter day, unless you're one of those people that really enjoys the winter. Then hopefully you're out cross-country skiing or sledding or snowboarding or whatever it is that folks like to do in the winter. Thank you again for joining us, and I'll stick around for some questions, but if not, feel free to drop off, and thank you and have a great day.